video. We're going to talk about this identity and mission that Jesus declares. He declares that his followers are the light. Not that they should try to be, but that they are the light, that we are the light. When you look at John 8:12, this is a kingdom identity rooted, that's Luke, not John. Okay, try that again. Rooted in him. This is an identity that is rooted in Christ. Look at John chapter 8, verse 12. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And the Pharisees challenged him after this, saying, here you are appearing as your own witness. Your testimony is not valid. Jesus answers them, even if I testify on my own behalf, my testimony is valid, for I know where I came from and where I am going, but you have no idea where I come from or where I am going. You judge by human standards. I pass judgment on no one. But if I do judge, my decisions are true because I am not alone. I stand with the Father who sent me. Now, I want to say, I wanted to read that because this is part of the identity he invites us into. This is part of the mission he shares with us. That our light is meant to be seen. Our lives are meant to be transformed through obedience, love, holiness, shining into the darkness of the world. The goal is not self-glory, but to be a spotlight pointing to him. Pointing to the Father. That's what Jesus did. I talked about this a while ago in one of our videos. Jesus constantly shined a spotlight on the Father, on the Father, on the Father. He didn't shine a spotlight on himself. He didn't try to glorify himself. He did speak in chapter 17 of John about glorifying the Son. If you go back and you look at 17, the very first part here, Father, the hour has come, glorify your Son, that your Son may glorify you, even in his glory, which was the crucifixion. So what he's talking about here is his glory that's about to come in his trial and persecution, ultimately crucifixion, to give his sacrificial love for us, give his blood as a sacrifice to cover our sins. He's saying, even in this, he's saying, glorify your Son, that your Son may glorify you. So if there's any doubt what his intention is, what our purpose is, living with integrity, compassion, justice, living in an everyday context as kingdom people. This is not a pastoral thing. This is not for the elders and the pastors and the deacons, the teachers. This is the light of all disciples, casting out into the world, showing the world the glory of God. This is hugely different from what we see the Pharisees doing and all of that. They're trying to live inside of the law, and they want to make sure everybody sees it, sees them, sees how good they're doing. That's not what we're doing. We're allowing Christ's character to be visible in us so that others will encounter the kingdom through our interactions and actions. Being an intentional witness, being intentional about our witness. Our words and deeds should always align to reflect Christ. Now, I'm going to say, I'm getting that right more often now than I did 10 years ago. Doesn't mean I don't still falter. Doesn't mean I don't still struggle. Doesn't mean, I think, and for a long time this was a problem for me when I was younger. I was called to ministry at a very young age. And then through a series of bad decisions and even worse excuses, and one of the worst excuses that I ever used was, I don't make a good witness. Who am I? I was like 20, and I was, like I said, called to ministry. I was in Christian college, and I was studying to be in ministry of some sort, probably a pastor somewhere or whatever. That was the intention. I definitely talk enough for it. But I allowed myself to kind of get in my head, right? Or I allowed the enemy maybe to get in my head. What business do I have telling anyone how to live? And it was partially accurate at the time. Because at the time, I wasn't submissive, I wasn't obedient, nearly as obedient as I should have been or as I am now. I've definitely, had a lot of time to kind of sit back and figure this out and look at it. And obviously time, we grow in wisdom or we don't. I mean, I guess it's possible we don't. A lot of times, even today, even now, a lot of times I feel like, oh, maybe not. Like if you just knew how much I struggle with X, Y, Z, you wouldn't listen to me. But the fact of the matter is, if we wait until we're ready, if I wait until I'm properly matured, then this never gets spread. No one ever knows the good news because I can't share the good news. I'm not good enough. So Philippians 2:15 is another place we'll go here. In Philippians chapter 2, verse 15 says, Philippians 2:15. Oh yeah, there we go, towards the end. But I'm going to read the whole. I'm going to read 14 and 15. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God, without fault, in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky, as you hold firmly to the word of life. And then I will be able to boast on the day of Christ that I did not run or labor in vain. Paul speaking to the people at Philippi through a letter is telling them that they're living this kingdom life. So that's one of the things that I want to kind of want to touch on just a little bit here, because living the kingdom life doesn't mean living in perfection. It means living in obedience. I can say that I'm living the kingdom life even though I'm not perfect, because every time the Spirit brings something in front of me that needs to be transformed, and it may take time. It's not like I instantly recognize everything. Okay, good. No, like I very much sometimes have to spend a good bit of time looking at it and going, really? A lot of times it's not, a lot of times it's not 100% with, pizzazz that I jump on whatever commands I'm getting, whatever improvement. A lot of times it's not, a lot of times it's not that I am getting it right, but I need to. And living as children of light, in Ephesians 5, I'll give you a minute to get there. We're going to go to verse 8. In Ephesians 5, verse 8, we'll talk about this. But we're going to talk about the idea that, because I was there for a very, very long time. Seriously, for a very long time. I was like, well, when I get my stuff together, then I'm going to share the gospel. If I wait till I get my stuff together to share the gospel, that's going to be in the new creation. Because that's when I'll be, blameless, perfect, truly perfect and blameless in new creation, as I completely and utterly become a new creation being, which, is the goal here. Being intentional means when you mess up and you realize it, like I did with that story I told earlier in the first part of the video, where I was yelling at my wife in front of somebody and didn't even realize what it was how it was affecting them, and then they were like, I'm surprised you're a follower of Christ. I would have never guessed it, by the way. I saw you acting. Like, yeah, that's true. No, I wasn't acting very much like a follower of Christ that day. I definitely wasn't denying myself. I definitely hadn't picked up any cross. And I certainly wasn't following him on that day when I was yelling at my wife on the phone. So, what's that mean? What's it mean? Well, let's look at Ephesians 5, 8, and 9. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the world. Live as children of light. For the fruits of the light consist in all goodness, righteousness, and truth. And find out what pleases the Lord. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. Again, this is the idea that when I realize acting that way in front of my wife, not only was it not fruitless, or in front of this person acting that way towards my wife, not only was it not fruitful, it could be damaging. It could damage a witness. A chance to witness to somebody later, sometime later, him and I started talking, and he was like, I didn't even realize you were a follower of Christ because of the way you were acting. Like, that could have damaged any witness if he had been an unbeliever. He was a believer. He actually, he and I spent a great deal of time talking about that through the years after that. Up until I just talked to him a couple weeks ago. And instead of damaging my witness, his witness was actually fruitful because, we talked about this, and he helped me to work through it and go, okay, wait a second. I'm going to have to adjust the way I interact. Not just because you saw it, but because I need to. What kind of witness was it to my wife? We were going to church on Sundays, and we were reading the Bibles together, and we were praying together, and then something happens, and I start yelling at her. I'm telling her that the peace that passes all understanding comes in times of trouble, and then times of trouble come, and what happens? You ask my wife, she'll tell you that in the last decade, 5 years, whatever it's been, since this happened, I'll bet you if you ask my wife, she'll tell you that I have had some real transformation in this area. Not that I'm always going to get it right. Not that I won't ever, begin to lose my temper with my wife again, because if I sat here and said, oh, I got that one right, now I never, now I'm good. I'm never going to lose my temper. I'm never going to speak, in a less than righteous way to my wife. If I told you that, I'd be lying. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's never going to happen. What I'm going to tell you is, and I'll tell you, it was a couple of months ago, there was a day where, some things were going on, and I kind of got a little snarky with my wife, and maybe 15, 20 minutes later, kind of sat back and went, I can't believe I did that. It didn't have anything to do with her, but here I am snipping at her. And I walked in, and I looked at her, and I said, honey, I realized that you probably thought I was upset with you, that it may have upset you that I acted this way. I said, it wasn't about you. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be doing it that way. Can we, pray together about this issue, that whatever it was I was dealing with? And it had a huge effect on her. Not that I didn't screw up and maybe do some yelling, show some anger that I shouldn't have showed, whatever. And actually, the fact that I came back, I found out not only affected her, impacted her, and was a type of witness to her, but also to my daughter. Because a couple of days after that, my daughter and we were arguing, and I actually was doing pretty well in the argument with my daughter, which happens, because Nicole was, at the time she was only 18. This was a while ago. She just turned 19 in September. This was back in like June or something. And not only had she witnessed what had happened with her mother, but then in this particular instance of us arguing, I literally, in the middle of the argument, I was like, all right, honey, let's take a second here, because I want to calm down. I don't want to be snippy or angry or act in an ungodly and self-righteous kind of way. I want to make sure we're addressing this properly. And she says, oh, like, and she brought up, I saw that with Mom a couple of weeks ago, that you realized. And she said, so now you're trying to catch it before. I said, yep, I'm trying to catch it before it gets to that point where I have to turn around and apologize. I said, so can we just back our anger and emotions up a few steps and sit down and talk? And she's like, yeah, let's do that. And we did. And then we were able to work through whatever the issue was. I forget what it was. It doesn't matter. We were able to work through that issue. And then afterwards, she told me, she's like, she's like, I want to know more. She started asking questions about this living as a child of God and what it means, and living kingdom life and what it means. Like we've had conversations, we've had multiple conversations since that were triggered by that very thing. Her seeing me apologize to her mother because that's what I should do, and then her seeing me apply that to later conversations to try to make sure that we don't get to that place of needing an apology. And when she saw that, and when she saw how it worked in and for my life, my kingdom life, and she saw that transformation, she wanted to know more about why. Okay, why? What's making you act this way? What's making you change that? Let's talk about that. So we did, and we do, and we probably will continue. And I think it's probably one of the greatest things that I get to deal with is, and you're not going to see it all the time. This isn't something where it's going to happen over and over again. Hopefully not. Hopefully you'll transform, or as will I. But hopefully we get to the point where it's kind of default. I've gotten to the point in my life where it's default. If somebody wrongs me, I default to I'm going to forgive them. So then I act according to the fact that we are going to reconcile, that I am going to forgive, and hopefully they'll forgive me, and that we are going to reconcile. And I try to live that way when it comes to somebody wronging me. Now I'm trying to live, now I'm working on, and have been working on for a while, the default of I don't want to have to reconcile. I want to get it right the first time around. It doesn't mean I'm always going to get it right the first time around. But if I'm at a default place of wanting to get it right the first time around, of wanting to interact with people in a godly manner, in the way that my Lord, and again, this comes down to Jesus' command later, where he tells the disciples to love one another as he has loved them. He tells them. Jesus says, love each other as I have loved you. That's a little different than love your enemies, and it's a little different than love your neighbor. Because this isn't about the neighbors, this isn't about the enemies anymore. Although loving them the way Christ loved us, good idea. This is now, he's talking about the disciples together. He's saying, love each other as I have loved you, in that sacrificial way. Be willing to love sacrificially, lead sacrificially. This is one of the reasons that I kind of started having, wanting to go through this. So I was researching, and I had typed in, I'll go back up here and read it for you. Jesus' missional commands, how they fit into and affect kingdom life, how they help transform us and help us in sharing the gospel, good news, and mission with the world, listing, supporting scriptures. So I put I started researching all that and coming up with stuff, and there was one thing that came up, and it kind of, I would almost say, it sort of triggered me in a way. That sounds like a terrible way to say that, but it kind of did, because it said pastoral care. And I'm not saying we shouldn't take care of our pastors. Please, we should definitely take care of all and any pastors, any teachers, any ministers, any deacon type people, anybody who is serving us in any kind of way, Pastor Claire and Pastor Ryan. For me, these are both men who I very much take seriously their advice, counsel, if one of them or sometimes both of them pull me into something and say, hey, listen, this thing where you're at, like, this is not good. Let's help you. I take it very seriously. I don't take it seriously because there's a pastor in front of their name. That's important, and it's a good thing, and I'm glad there are people who are pastors and people who are preachers, and people who are ministers and elders and deacons, and these are all good things to understand. But understand that when it comes to Pastor Claire or Pastor Ryan, when it comes to me talking about them, about something that I'm struggling with or whatever, it's never just because they're quote-unquote ordained. I've had conversations with people about this because I'm ordained. I got ordained to officiate a wedding for somebody one time because they needed somebody to officiate their wedding, and actually this young lady and this young man who got together, they were in their 20s, and by the time I met them, they were probably early 20s, 22, 23. When they got together, they were 28 or 29. I think he was about to turn 30 when I officiated their wedding. And when I officiated their wedding, I did it. I literally, the only reason I did it was they had contacted my one partner, and he was officiating weddings where he's at. We'd talked about it a little bit, but I hadn't really taken it all that seriously yet because I was like, wow. But he called me and he said, hey, there's some people up by you. They're about 2.5 hours away. Okay. They're trying to get married. Okay. That's awesome. I said, what's the problem? So we started talking, and come to find out that the church they were attending, so they got together 10 years ago. They've been together for 5 years. By the time that they got married, they've been together for 5 years. About a year and a half before they got married, they were baptized and gave their lives to Christ. And then they had been talking about it. They had already had a baby. They had a child. They were living together. They were living together as a married couple, but they hadn't been married yet, legally and in front of friends and family and witnesses. I'm going to tell you my own personal opinion. If they committed to each other and then they were physical, they were married in the eyes of God, in my opinion. But you should also do the ceremony. You should also make a point. And that's where they got, right? They got to this point they were like, we should get married. We should sit down and figure out what it means to be in a covenant of marriage. And we want to put God in the center of our marriage, which, quite frankly, if God's in the center of a marriage, then you get closer and closer. The closer you are to God, the closer you are to each other, the closer you are to each other, the closer you get to God. But anyway, they went to the church that they had been attending, and they asked their preacher, their pastor, if he would officiate their wedding. And he told them no, because they were currently living in sin. Now, I never got an opportunity to talk to the pastor. I don't know his name, and I'm not going to give you his name, and it doesn't really matter. You happen to be him and you hear this. Please understand, I'm not talking poo-poo or down-talking you or any of that. This isn't about that part of it, because I don't understand why a pastor wouldn't want to. Now, maybe in their conversation, they hadn't convinced him that they understood what it meant. Maybe, he knew them better than me, so maybe there was some kind of reason. But I was told that the clergy that they had contacted to try to marry them, or to ask to marry if he would do their service, had said no because they were living in sin. I'm sitting there looking at it going, if you think they're living in sin, I'm not entirely sure if that's the case, but if you think they're living in sin because they're living together, they have a child, they had been committed to each other for years at this point. If you think this is living in sin, which a lot of people will say it is, they got saved, and then a year or so later, they're like, we need to get married. The Spirit moved them to say, we need to get married, officially get married, whatever. Why wouldn't you want to officiate that service? Why wouldn't you want to help bring them into obedience? If they're being moved by the Spirit to be married, why wouldn't I want to be a big part of that? Not only would I want to be a part of it, I'd be a big part of it. I want to be yeah, I'm cool with officiating this. You're telling me that you've been living in what you consider now, because the Holy Spirit moved you to think this way, a sinful way, and you want to fix that by getting married? Of course. Of course I want to jump on helping that happen. Glory to God. So anyway, that's why I got ordained. And I say all that to say this. Long before I did the process and got the little certificate that says I'm an ordained pastor, I was ordained by God. Okay? We are all. If you, and this is, I'm going to wrap up today's video with this very exacting idea and statement, which I'm sure will make me just all kinds of popular with all the religious folks. I tell my wife, sometimes my wife will ask me, she'll be like, what'd you do today? Well, I pissed off a bunch of religious people, I'm sure. And from some of the notes I get, I don't read a lot of the negative stuff. I get a lot of negative stuff. I only read the ones that really, number one, if you send me something just telling me I'm an idiot because I said something with no scripture back, like, if you got something you disagree, shoot me a note. 814-761-6996 is my cell phone. You can text my cell phone. I could connect you right now. I could put you on. And you could express your opinion if you just know scripturally I'm wrong. I want to hear it. You're called to do that. By our Savior, by our Master, by our King. You are called to tell me if I'm wrong. I'm called to tell you if you're wrong. That's a fact. If I'm not being obedient in a place where I should be obedient, and you for some reason are concerned about it, that means you and I are probably in a close enough relationship that the Spirit is moving you to look at me and say, Chuck, listen, this is what the Spirit's showing me. Like, you need to let's get you lined up in the right places. For you were once darkness, but now you are children. You are the light in the Lord. Live as children of light. Verse 8, Ephesians 5. These missional commands matter. These life commands matter. Living a kingdom life matters, because this is how we move into all of these things. It reorients us to obedience around love rather than legalism. That's why when they asked Jesus, what's the greatest commandment, he didn't say, do not murder. He didn't say, have no image or idol before me. He didn't say any of the 10 commandments. He didn't list any of the 613 laws, right? 613, I think that's what it is. Jewish traditional laws and religious laws, and all of some of it hygiene, some of it safety, like food safety, stuff like that. They had 613, if I remember correctly, laws. He didn't say any of that. He said, love the Lord your God. And just to make sure we understand, this wasn't a new concept that Jesus came up with. Deuteronomy 6. I'm flipping back to it. You don't have to. You don't want to. I'll read it to you. But we go through the law. Right? I want to kind of look at this real quick. I know, so I'm going to wrap up, and I'm going to. But let's just look real quick here, right? We have introduction to the law. That's the end of chapter 4 in Deuteronomy. Then chapter 5, Deuteronomy, the commandments, the 10 commandments. Moses summoned all of Israel, said, hear, Israel, the decrees and laws that I declare in your hearing today. Learn them and be sure to follow them. This is what Moses said. And then he goes through the 10 commandments. And then you can go read that. I suggest reading it. Sometimes you'll read it and you'll be like, I didn't realize. And then, after going through all of this, in chapter 6, Moses still speaking, these are the commands and decrees and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you, your children, and their children, and after them, may fear the Lord your God as long as you live, by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, and so that you may enjoy long life Hear, Israel, and be careful to obey, so that it may go well with you, and that you may increase greatly, and in a land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, promised you. And in verse 4 of chapter 6 of Deuteronomy, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them upon your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on your door frames of your houses and on your gates. Now, write them on your. A while back, I felt a little silly because I had, like, in my office, I had little 3x5 cards that I had just, like, tacked up in a couple different places with some different verses on it that helped me if I started to struggle with whatever. Right? Just it would help me focus. It would help me bring, myself back into that obedient mind frame, etc. And I felt a little odd about it. I'm going to be honest with you. I felt a little odd about it because I didn't really understand even though I did it on purpose. Amazingly enough, I did it on purpose, but I didn't really understand what in the world I was kind of doing, thinking about, looking at, whatever, and why it was important. I really didn't understand why it was important to have these all over. And I realized that this allows me to keep them in my heart, right? And it helps me to focus, right? So, Jesus, when he's asked what the greatest commandment is, he doesn't quote any of the Ten Commandments. He doesn't quote any of the other laws and stuff that they had been, instruction they'd been given over the years. He goes right to this verse 5 of chapter 6 of Deuteronomy. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. Now, if you look back at the Ten Commandments, you will realize that if you're loving the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, you're going to live inside of these Ten Commandments. You're going to live inside of the laws that he's given us. You're going to let the Sabbath be holy. We may not celebrate the Sabbath we used to, the way the Jews did, way back when. I've actually wondered about that. I've thought about that. Like, should we be celebrating the Sabbath on Saturday as Christians the way that the Jews did prior to Jesus? Maybe. I don't know. I'm still working on kind of figuring that out. But love the Lord your God with all your heart. And then, of course, he gives the second, which is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Then later he gives the apostles and disciples a little bit more clarity on it. Love one another as I've loved you. None of these are contradictory. They're just complementary. If Jesus tells me to love the Lord my God and love my neighbors, and then later he says, don't forget to love your enemies. And then later he says, by the way, love each other the way I love you. It's just clarifying. You see what I mean? All right. That's enough for today. Wade coming up next on the radio for our folks at godslovelive.com, I think. I know. We're about 20 minutes into his programming. Hopefully Wade won't mind. Don't worry, I started at the beginning. I'll just whack a couple songs off so that you can still hear everything he has to say. But first, Matt Kearney. Air I Breathe here on godslovelive.com with Chuckles in the afternoon. Have a great day. Talk to you later. I gotta disconnect our Phillipsburg Live and let it reconnect over on the other side for our folks. Maybe. And for those of you watching on the recordings, thank you for joining me. I hope you'll share the videos with people. I hope you'll shoot me a note, 814-761-6996, and have a great day. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May He make His face to shine upon you and guide you each and every day through this kingdom life. Later, I'm going to start part two of our video. We're going to talk about this identity and mission Jesus declares. He declares that His followers are the light. Not that they should try to be, but that they are the light, that we are the light. When you look at John 8:12, this is a kingdom identity rooted. That's Luke, not John. Okay, try that again. Rooted in Him. This is an identity that is rooted in Christ. Look at John chapter 8, verse 12. When Jesus spoke again to the people, He said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And the Pharisees challenged Him after this, saying, here you are appearing as your own witness. Your testimony is not valid. Jesus answers them, even if I testify on my own behalf, my testimony is valid, for I know where I came from and where I am going, but you have no idea where I come from or where I am going. You judge by human standards. I pass judgment on no one. But if I do judge, my decisions are true because I am not alone. I stand with the Father who sent me. Now, I want to say, I wanted to read that because this is part of the identity He invites us into. This is part of the mission He shares with us, that our light is meant to be seen. Of suffering and shame, and I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. In the shadow of the cross, the Father speaks to us. He spoke one loving word, His Son Jesus. I will cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. Oh, that old rugged cross, so despised by the world, has a wondrous attraction for me. For the dear Lamb of God left His glory above to bear it to dark Calvary. In the shadow of the cross, the Father speaks to us. He spoke one loving word, His Son Jesus. I will cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. Cross stained with blood so divine, a wondrous beauty I see. For it was on that cross Jesus suffered and died to pardon and sanctify me. To the old rugged cross I will never be true. Its shame and reproach help if I turn on the mic? There we go. Good afternoon. How you doing? Hope you're having a great day. Hope you're enjoying the music. I hope you're enjoying the afternoon. You're not the radio channel. We're going to bring the radio channel in here in about, a minute and a half. At the end of this particular song that's playing right now, we will bring in our radio group, and then we're going to discuss Jesus' commands today some more. Today we're going to finish up missional commands, kingdom advance commands, and then afterwards we are going to start talking about spiritual discipline commands. That'll be in our part 2 of the recording. If you're watching the recording, I guess I should start the recording, huh? Start the recording. There we go. Part 1 of the video today for Kingdom Living. If you love me, keep my commands. John 14:15. We've been talking about Jesus' commands all week. His commands for us and how they affect our kingdom life. We're going to do some more of that today. Let's see. We're going to talk about I'm going to talk a little bit more about the missional commands of our kingdom life. Let's see if I can find my place here. This is a long and a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff. Making disciples of all nations, being witnesses, preaching the gospel, letting your light shine, feeding his sheep. Feeding his sheep. I'm going to talk a little bit about all of those in the beginning of our video here. Probably won't be a long discussion because we've covered this pretty much Monday and Tuesday. Covered it pretty well, I think. I haven't gotten any major questions or comments about it. A couple of comments about in general enjoying it. I appreciate that, and I had, let me see here, let's bring up the messages. I want to say hello to Santiago and Mike Anmal, I think I pronounced that right, and Kashif. And I appreciate the notes, how's everything going? Anmal said, hey, how's everything going? Love the videos. Mike said, that's wonderful. May God continue to bless you. That's an answer to my comment or answer back to him because he asked how you do. I mean, most of the time everybody asks. I wonder sometimes if you watch the whole video because you don't really ask specific questions. You just say, hey, how's everything going? How's your family doing? Love the video. Watching for your live videos. Mike, you can go to godslovelive.life, our YouTube channel. You can subscribe and click the little notification button. It'll notify you. I don't know how they do the notifications as far as the live videos go for Lord's Book, but I have been doing the live on Lord's Book, although I'm not really sure. I'm going to start that now, but I'm not really sure exactly the best way to go about it because it doesn't want to let me change like the aspect of the video. I'm using a virtual camera from our OBS program that puts it out, and it's like a little big, so you can't really see the way I wish you could. I'm not really sure what to do about that, but if you have some idea or if you want to say hello, you can always do so. That is not the button I wanted. I wanted to start that so that I can go here and go live. Here we go. Go live. Oh, I forgot the radio group. Oh, welcome. You're listening to God's Love Live, Phillipsburg Live, and BinghamtonLive.com with Chuckles in the afternoon here as we go live. And we are live on a multitude, actually, of places. Twitch, God's Love Live.life, which is our video channel. Okay, And there's the microphone. That's all good. Camera. Make sure it's using what it's supposed to, I guess. OBS virtual camera. Yeah. It kind of cuts things off a little bit. I wish there was a way to change that just a hair, but I can always change it to this. I don't think I can because that's being used by, yeah, okay, so, well, I'll just go there. Try this again. Looks like that's all good. Okay, so, again, welcome to the program, and we're going to be talking about kingdom commands, Jesus' commands for our kingdom lives, the commands that Jesus gave us. Love God, love your neighbor. We read that, talked about it yesterday. And then the new and distinctive sacrificial love that Jesus calls us to when he tells us to love one another as he loved us. We're going to talk today about, real quick, about letting your light shine and feeding his sheep. Just touch real quick on that. There was something, and I should have highlighted it because I don't remember exactly what it was yesterday that I was going to talk about when it comes to that. There was something else I wanted to bring up, but I don't know where it went. And I have so many notes. Let your light. That was what I was looking for. Let your light shine. Being light and salt in the world. And being in the world, not of it, which isn't exactly how it says it in Scripture, but I do like the idea. Sorry. Anyway, how being light to the world affects our missional kingdom life. Kingdom life and I had it in my head, man. Today's one of those days. I would be honest with you. Today's one of those days where this is literally a because you said so, Lord day. Like, prior to the video, I had a whole bunch of stuff going on, and I had a couple conversations and whatever, and I'm not going to get into any of the details of that stuff, but it was discouraging and disheartening for me in a lot of ways. So stepping into this video and study has been harder than it sometimes is. Finding a way to really be able to keep and talk about this stuff and how it's going to affect our kingdom lives and how it transforms our hearts. To be more efficient kingdom citizens. Sounds about right, huh? So everything got squirreled up today, I guess, or whatever, but I wanted to talk about this salt and light. You're the salt of the earth, but if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? Is it's no longer good for anything except for be thrown out, trampled underfoot. And then, of course, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden, Not, neither do, here, I get the hiccups right as I'm starting the video. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. You don't hide a light. If you light a light to draw people in, you don't then hide it, right? Jesus gives these two powerful metaphors. You are salt, you are light. Not you should be, you are. And the reason I say that is because, or the reason I point that out, he's already made you that. Now you need to live that identity purposefully and publicly and intentionally. As you look at salt, well, what is it? It's a flavor enhancer. It's a symbol of covenantal faithfulness. You can find that if you look at Numbers 18:19, which we will do here. Matthew, Mark, Luke. There we go. Matthew, Mark, Luke. I'm in Numbers, man. Numbers 18, verse 19. We'll look at that in just a minute. It's also a purifier used in offerings, which we see in Leviticus chapter 2, and a preservative. We think of salt as a flavor enhancer. We dribble it onto our meat. I put last night we had, what did we have? Meatballs and mashed potatoes. And I put salt on it. My wife says too much. It helps to enhance the flavor. I like it. And if you get too much, it's too salty and it's not good. But if you have just enough, it can very much increase the flavor and make it a better flavor, right? So, verse 18, or chapter 18, verse 19 of Numbers says, whatever is set aside from the holy offering the Israelites present to the Lord, I give you and your sons and daughters as your perpetual share. It is an everlasting covenant of salt before the Lord for both you and your offspring. An everlasting covenant of salt. It's a symbol here of the covenant. We see that again, Numbers 18:19. So when we look at that, okay, and then we say to ourselves, well, what does that mean for me? What does that mean in my kingdom life? What does that mean in living a kingdom life that honors and glorifies God the Father? That means preserving moral and spiritual truth. This is one of those things that Christians have a very hard time with. We really do. You might not realize it. You might not understand. Maybe it doesn't feel that way because we seem so, self-righteous. We seem so judgmental if we tell somebody that, I see this sin that you're living in this sin. Have you given your heart to God? When we talk to people about giving their heart to the Lord and about becoming kingdom citizens and being saved, they see it as wanting to ruin their day. So I don't know about, whoever's watching, but for me, when I was growing up, there came a very significant shift in how I reacted and handled my father, my biological earthly father, correcting me. How I saw that was definitely affected as I grew and as I aged and as I understood what exactly was going on there. Because, when I would say to my dad, I want to go to the dance this week, or I want to go to this party with my friend, or whatever, and he would tell me no, and oftentimes I would just assume it was because he wanted to ruin my day. I literally, I like, when Nakoma was younger and would ask, permission or whatever for doing stuff, she still does. Even though she's an adult, she still does. She come out the other night and says, is it okay if I go over to my friend Riley's? I'm going to spend the night over there. And Riley lost her grandfather a month-ish ago. So Nakoma's been trying to help her because she lived with her granddad. She was very tight with her granddad, very, very close to him, and it was rough for her when she lost him. So Nakoma's been trying to be a good friend, a good person, and in my opinion, in my take it for what it is, opinion. She wants to be a godly woman and help her friend, which is great. But she still asked, can I go over? And I was like, you're an adult. You can do whatever you want. But I appreciate, talking to us. You still do live with us. We still do take care of everything for you. So that was nice. But when she was younger and she would want to go to some dance or some party or some friend's house or some whatever, if I ended up saying no, oftentimes I would look at her and say, listen, it's not because I want to ruin your life. It's because X, Y, Z. I would explain. My dad didn't explain. And he shouldn't have had to. I should have just known that he wouldn't ask me. He wouldn't tell me no if it was something, unless it was something that he saw a possibility of harm or a problem or whatever. But I didn't see it till I was older. We can't expect them to see it. They're not going to see it. I can tell my children something I figured out as I was growing because my father, gave me the room to figure it out or whatever. I cannot really expect them to believe it because, they don't understand. I mean, I can do that now. There are things now where I'm looking at my adult children and being like, oh, I wish they would just listen. You're going to regret this. It's not going to be good. It's going to be something that you might struggle. You might have problems, whatever, with it. And I just wish I could look at them and say, no, listen, you need to do X, Y, Z. And I know that if you do X, Y, Z, it's going to turn out better, but I can't expect you to. I didn't create that authoritative, not authoritarian, authoritative. I don't have that authoritative relationship with my adult children because I've been wrong. I'll probably be wrong again. And I've always just recognized it. My dad and that generation, for the most part, would look at us, those of us who you would call, Generation X, they would look at us and be like, because I said so. And that was it, man. Just, that's it. Because I said so, and we're done. We're going to move on now. We didn't do that. We tried to correct. We overcorrected. Our generation overcorrected with the participation trophies and you're perfect the way you are. And, I'm not saying that just beat your children willy-nilly is a good idea, but at the same time, they should have. I took a job one time. WPHB. I took a job at WPHB, and when I first took the job, they were like, "We need somebody to run our WPHB in Phillipsburg." And I was like, "Okay, so let's do that." And then I said that I wouldn't take the role of manager. They wanted to make me the manager for whatever purposes at one point, and I was like, I don't want to be the quote-unquote manager. I can't be the quote-unquote manager because we have a morning personality who is Sheldon Sharpless, who just cannot be fired. Now, it's not because I wanted to fire him, but he knew he couldn't be fired. He knew the radio station could, under no circumstances, let him go. They had to kind of just deal with it until he retired, even if he didn't follow the rules. So you couldn't set rules for how things had to go in this office and on that station and expect him to really follow them because there's no one of the former owners of that station had fired him, and it went very, very badly publicly for them. So there was just no way of being like, listen, you got to follow the directives of the leadership team in this building. You had to find another way, and I didn't at the time have the ability to do so. So I didn't want to be his boss. I just wanted to be a coworker, and I think we had a better relationship because that's where we were at. There was never any time where it was like, dude, I'm going to make them fire you. I knew better. I knew better. He built that place. His voice, I knew that even if I didn't understand why, I knew that his guidance, and he taught me so much, and I so appreciate and love that man. And him and Jerry, who worked the 10 to 2 shift, same thing. He didn't have kind of community swag that Sheldon had, where the owners had to be afraid to let him go or to suspend him or anything. And radio,